back. We're going to kind of talk about what our subscribers pay us for, and that's recruiting. So let's talk a little bit about that. Kind of first off, when we got you here, let's talk a little bit about the 2012 class. Let's talk first about the guys that A&M does have. Some guys that coming in that you like, that they think big impact guys. Everyone knows Trey Williams. I think everyone knows Thomas Johnson. But maybe some guys that you really like that maybe fans aren't expecting as much from.
Yeah, and actually before that, real Bloom, we're going to talk about just the overall class, but I will maybe even talk about some of the guys that Coach Sumlin took that Coach Sherman wouldn't or didn't want to take, and get your personal opinion on that.
There are several guys as far as this year that came in play that when Sumlin got here that he did take. For instance, Thomas Johnson. We never offered Thomas Johnson because he was the inside receiver. We were looking for the Randy Moss, Jeff Fuller type receiver on the outside, fit the bill as far as the NFL style prospects. Devontae Harris was a kid that I've worked with over and over again at our camps here, who I honestly said out loud that I would give my job up to take this kid because he's a natural born football player, not because his dad played here. The kid is a football player, and but we wouldn't take him because he's too small. Well, the key thing is he's 5'11", 160 pounds. Every corner is going to be 5'11", 160 at some point. It's up to the strength to put weight on a kid and make him 175, 180. Because when you look at an Iowa State, you look at a Kansas State, if I can get players better than them, Texas Tech, Baylor, there are 6 teams that you can name that my players will be better if it gives them an opportunity to win ball games.
Yeah, and let's talk about, you kind of hit on it there, the offering guys, not offering guys. Under Sherman, what was that process? What did it take to get you go out to a high school, you see a kid, this kid is great, I want to offer him. What did it take to get an offer out?
Well, I'll say this, one thing about Coach Sherman also, he is a great evaluator of talent, not to take that away from him. But the key thing is when you brought in a guy, basically you watched it as a position coach, and when you watched it, you would take it to the position coach and have them watch it. And once they watched it, they would watch it either as an offensive staff or a defensive staff, and then you would make your decisions by there. And if you really liked the kid, let's say, for instance, Thomas Johnson. If I really like Thomas Johnson, but we didn't want to offer him, let's say Troy Walters didn't like him, then I would go to Coach Sherman. Sherman would watch every kid, and the final say-so came down from him. So really, for the most part, if you really wanted the kid, it became a battle to you. He wanted you to fight for a kid, but at some point, my point was, why fight? When this is like for corners, everybody wants a 6'1", 6'2" corner. Well, that guy comes once in a lifetime. I just want a corner that can play football. All right, because once again, I'm trying to win the Big 12 title. I can compete with every receiver in the Big 12.
Yeah, and kind of along those lines, what was the timeline? How long would it take from the first time you saw a kid maybe to when Sherman was willing to extend that offer? About how long was that process?
Well, the process, I would say kind of hard and more difficult to explain for the most part to make you guys understand it. But once you brought the video in, like I said, you passed it through, the proper lines. And then once Coach Sherman watched it, and then it became one of those things, because everything we recruited on was character, integrity, as far as what the university is based on. So we had to go back out and make sure academically he was sound, make sure that, his background check, that there was no criminal history behind that, because once again, we didn't want to truly bring in a kid that had bad character. The timeline could have taken us 1 day, which is no-brainers, to 2 or 3 months. I mean, for the most part, let's say if you had 4 kids, and if I knew Taylor was going to commit if we offered, we went off to Taylor because of the fact we were trying to get you, Aubrey. I mean, so it became one of those things where, so while we're waiting on you, we went off of him, and then all of a sudden he gets offers from other people in that case.
Was there a player maybe during your time here that the process took a little longer than you wanted, and maybe he didn't commit to A&M, a guy that your ultimate, if you could go back and change it, you'd have this guy on A&M's team? Is there a player like that out there, or maybe a couple of them?
There could be a couple. I can't say of any right off. Jalen Mills, for example. Even though Jalen Mills is, I think, going to LSU, who was a kid. Devontae Harris. When I talked to someone back in January, I said, "There's one kid that you should go get," and he already knew about him. And he said he loved Devontae Harris. There are several kids. Offhand, I can't remember him. Maybe Taylor could help because he was always calling me.
We're going
going into A&M's going to the SEC next year. I wanted to get your take on what areas A&M needs to recruit better to be a competitive team in that league.
Right now, everything on defense. I mean, I know you guys mentioned linebacker play. Stephen Jenkins, I think he is probably the most physical linebacker that's out there. Jonathan Stewart, it's going to be Jonathan Stewart. He is going to be that type of linebacker, middle linebacker, to where he's not going to fit you up. He's going to let everything run. He's going to chase you down from the side. D-line wise, like I said, Coach Williams, if he was here, he would tell you we didn't have enough defensive linemen for a three-man front. So you have to recruit defensively. Even in the secondary, when you look at it now, you're still lacking in the secondary. You don't have you got safeties coming in, but you don't have enough depth defensively. Offensively, when you look at offense, you got to go to the receiver position. I mean, you're fit everywhere else, but in Coach Sumlin's offense, you have to go to the receiver position. You guys mentioned Nate Askew a while ago. Nate, when we recruited Nate, he's a 10-5, whatever he was. And I'll tell Nate till his day, if you're a 10-5, then I should be in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a 10-5 downhill, maybe. It kind of brings us up to the next thing. If we're talking about the 2013 class, what they're trying to go get, who are the guys that, A&M's already, I think, at 14 or 13 commits right now, and who are the guys out there that you think could be maybe next to jump on board, and the guys that may be high priority right now, Taylor?
Yeah, I think first on the list is Jordan Master Giovanni. He's a linebacker at a Dallas Jesuit. Feel real confident Texas A&M is going to land their linebacker. And I know according to our close sources, he's a guy that really A&M feels fits their defense and what they're looking for. Kenny Hill, who will be at the spring game, a South Lake quarterback, actually 5A state champion last year for the Dragons, so he'll be in town. Seth Collins, safety, 2014 safety from Skyline, obviously a school you're familiar with. I think Nick Harvey is another one. Safety at Lancaster, another 2014 kid. I'm really kind of sticking to the Metroplex because these are guys that Coach Mcmillian here is really familiar with. I know, obviously, Skyline was an important school for everyone in the state, even outside the state. What do you think personally about guys like Cedric Collins, Skyline in general, and the type of talent that school puts out year after year?
One thing I can tell you about Skyline, the head coach, Coach Samples, is an Aggie. Both his daughters graduated from here. Therefore, getting kids here from Skyline is very important. The talent pool there is unremarkable. It's just the fact that you just got to go out and see it. You mentioned Seth Collins. He's a kid that was a sophomore a couple of years ago that I watched at corner. He'll probably eventually be a corner as far as in college. And then you look at his son, Rashad Samples, who's a receiver. I mean, there's talent there. And I think the key thing is being able to say, okay, I'm not caring about the size of the kid. I'm looking at it, the kid can play, and let me give him to Larry Jackson. Let Larry Jackson put the weight on him and the strength, and we'll go from there.
And I know before the show you were telling me that when you were scouting Lancaster, and obviously Deshaun Hall just committed to Texas, visited Texas A&M unofficially last week, kind of under the radar. I'm sure Mac Brown's real happy about that visit. But a 2014 safety athlete, Nick Harvey, who actually just picked up an offer you wanted to offer. Coach Sherman, again, it's tough to get an offer passed by him sometimes, but I know he had some interesting comments to you when you met him once.
Well, when I was talking to Coach Fletcher, who's now at Dallas Carter, who used to coach Nick Harvey, I was out there today, spring practice, when Nick Harvey was out practicing and wasn't supposed to. And that led to me recognizing Nick Harvey. So I told Coach Fletcher, I said, hey, tell the kid Nick Harvey, hey, that he has an offer from Texas A&M. And this kid at this time was an eighth grade, becoming a freshman. And so and I went out last spring, and Nick Harvey was out spring practice, and one of the coaches come up to me and said, hey, Nick Harvey wants to commit to you. And I said, well, he can't commit just yet because of the fact that I still have to run it through the head man. But he is a kid that I believe wants to be an Aggie, and I think, making A&M a choice for him would be great because of the fact as far as, working with Coach Yates, me knowing Coach Yates, and just because I know what A&M has to offer him, what he needs.
Yeah, you talked to, I kind of want to focus a little bit the last 5 minutes or so of this recruiting part on the quarterback situation a little bit in this recruiting class. We talked about the quarterback situation on campus right now, but kind of a quarterback situation for the future also. And it's a classic that we're talking about, a guy who has the measurables, a against the guy who maybe has the everything but the measurables. You know, you've got Cole Stewart, who's 6'3", you know, a big kid, has a strong arm, but on the field he hasn't actually proven a whole lot. You know, they haven't won a state championship or anything like that. And on the other side of it, you got Kenny Hill, who is only 6'1", he's the same size as Jamil and Johnny, around that same height. You know, he's not going to overpower you with his arm strength, but a guy that's gotten it done on the high school level. You know, how familiar are you with these guys, and kind of what are your thoughts on those two guys?
Well, Cole Stewart, you know, we were pretty old, and you know, Kenny Hill, not familiar too much with Kenny Hill because Coach Wynn, that was his area. But as far as just to understand, you know, Kenny Hill himself being a very talented quarterback, and you know, and what you're about to get into, you won't convince, and I believe someone had mentioned this in a press conference. You know, the great plays on their feet, because at some point you're going to get some pressure. And I think, you know, when I think about Joker, Joker was not that creative. So when you look at it, when you compare the two, when you look at measurables, the key thing is, I believe, what in the college game, you're looking for guys that can make plays. I mean, you know, and sometimes, you know, you don't want to take everybody that's short, but if a guy is a playmaker, you got to take it.
You know, sticking with the Metroplex here, you know, A&M has really attacked that area of the state where, you know, in years past they haven't been that strong. And I just wanted to get your take on, you know, maybe how hard, you know, it is perception-wise to walk into high schools, and why that might be, you know, just difficult for you to do your job at times.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I was coaching at TCU, the last regime that was here before Sherman, for every 10 kids that the last regime would take, we would look at them and only take 2. The other 8, we said, couldn't play for us. All right, so for that case, I recruited the Metroplex up there, great with the coaches. When I got here, they did not like Texas A&M. You know, and they didn't like Texas A&M for more than one reason. And, you know, and it had something to do with the last regime, you know, that was here before Coach Sherman. So trying to break that mold was kind of hard. And when we did break that mold, and I think we broke that mold even though Corey Nelson decided to go to Oklahoma, but when we broke that mold, the coaches started to see what Coach Sherman was doing, that he wasn't a coach that was just, you know, blowing smoke. You know, he was about Texas. He was about Texas A&M University, you know, as far as being Texas the state, as far as making sure that we go out, and he was making himself presentable to each and every high school coach. So it made it easier, you know, when we broke this mold before we got let go, you know, as far as the recruiting class, because of the fact of what the coaches started to understand about Coach Sherman and us recruiting. That answers your question.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get on Taylor's take on kind of continuing that. It seems like especially David Beatty has just attacked the Metroplex area. And those guys, especially early on in this class, have gotten a whole lot of high-profile commits from the Dallas area. Not only in the 2012 class that they pulled in, you know, you mentioned Thomas Johnson, Devontae Harris, and those guys, but this class already coming in. You've got J.J. Gustafson, who's a Dallas area guy. You know, you talk about the kids from Skyline that they're in on. A bunch of these guys. And I want to get your take on how they've done so far at attacking that area.
I'm going to correct you like Coach Sumlin did at the press conference. It's David Beatty.
I thought I said Beatty, and it was Beatty at the press conference.
It's Beatty.
I'm going to get it wrong forever. I still call him Tim DeReuter, so that's going to be wrong forever. So.
You know, I know, speaking to some good sources, that really what A&M wants to do with 2013 and beyond at the wide receiver position is just recruit the fastest men on the face of the earth. This is what it really comes down to. Is going into the SEC, it really doesn't all matter about size and measurables. You're trying to get guys that can really stretch the field and create separation against these really physical and them talented defensive backs that the SEC produces. I know you really liked Quib Gonzalez. I don't know if you knew about Quincy Adeboigio, who's also committed from Cedar Hill. But what did you think about Quib on film? And was he a guy that if you were making the decision, you would have offered?
Yes, I would have offered Quib a long time ago. From the first time I watched him, you know, on film, and the first time I watched a game up in the press box watching him. Quib has that dynamic as far as a playmaker. You know, the key thing is, you know, once again you say, well, his size. Well, you had mentioned, you know, stretching the field, and you know we're going to talk about our nemesis here. You know, as far as Baylor, you know, when you look at Baylor, you look at the receiver, Kendall Wright. I mean, the one thing that they had on the field was what every receiver had speed. So if you got speed with the right offensive line that can protect the quarterback, you're going to have big plays, and that's one thing that we did not have as far as receivers. We did not have speed on the outside. Now, Swope was a good receiver on the inside, but you have to take kids like with Squibb in this style of offense. You know, you don't have to throw bombs, but he can catch the ball and make things happen.
Yeah, and just kind of a closing note on the recruiting thing, Taylor. I want to kind of, you know, going forward the next few weeks, the evaluation period, what are some of the big, you know, players that you think, you know, right around that line of the guys that are important for the coaching staff to go out and see over these next few weeks?
Well, you know, I think there's quite a few guys that, you know, we'll mention on the board once coaches hit the recruiting trail next week after spring ball is done. But guys that they're immediately going to go check on, Rodney Freewell, of course, over at Haley Taylor. They're going to go check on Reggie Chavis at Sharp Sound, another linebacker that Texas A&M is really close to landing right now. There's quite a few guys that A&M has on their radar that they're going to take the time to not only evaluate but just show, hey, we want you, we need you. You know, I don't know really what the entire focus was for Coach. I'd like to get your take on it. What they were trying to accomplish out at spring evaluations when you were not only looking at commits but looking at guys that were priority targets for you that you needed to land.
Well, the key thing is when we go out in the spring, you know, basically you're recruiting for this year and you're recruiting for the year after. So therefore you're collecting names, and when you're going out spring ball, you know, you cannot talk to the athletes, period, to the coach. And the key thing is you're looking at the talent level, you're seeing drills, making sure, hey, can this kid move, can this kid do that? You know, as far as moving back and forth, can he catch the football, is he physical? So spring evaluation is more of just making sure that you're on the right kid. You know, because, you know, the key thing is we all can watch game video, and the game video can show a kid dominating, but it could be a game to where it's a 4-18 playing 1-18, which doesn't never happen, but that's sometimes in a conference or in a district, that's what it looks like. So when you go out, you want to make sure the kid has the right, you know, agility as before you offer.
Yeah, and evaluations kind of leads us into our next thing. We're talking about 10 minutes leading up to the NFL draft and kind of a little bit about what makes evaluating so hard and why some of us have been horrible at our jobs in the past. I'm talking about, I have some recruiting rankings for you guys here in a little bit. So first thing off, you know, Coach White said, talk about your defensive backs. We have a couple of guys that could be taking, who do you think is going to pick up, and just kind of talk about some of those guys and what you thought when you first saw them.
Well, Terrence Frederick, when I first got here, actually I worked out T. Fred. You know, keep saying TCU, and I'm sorry about saying it, but when we were at the TCU camp at Katy, worked out Terrence Frederick, worked out Trent. Loved T. Fred, but T. Fred at the time was 135, 140 pounds at that time. And so when I coached him, just like I would coach, you know, any player that I coached, when I got here, we needed a corner, and we needed a corner bad. You know, and so actually Coach Malone, you know, brought the video to me. He said, hey, I got this kid that made it. I said, well, let me see it. And then I was Terrence Frederick. I said, I know this kid. I said, you know, the kid got the talent. I said, we need a corner. And the year after, he had gained probably about 15 pounds. So we offered him. And, you know, he accepted. You know, so when you look at T. Fred, look at Judy. You know, Judy is he's one of those guys that, you know, like I said, I get emotional when I talk about Judy.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell us about Coriel Judy, because he's a guy that fans didn't really get to know as a player. He's a quiet guy when he's, you know, by the microphone. But tell us the other side of Coriel Judy.
He's a quiet guy, and you know, even in meetings, you know, the one thing about Coriel, he didn't start playing football, I believe, until his sophomore, junior year in high school. Coriel comes out of Marlin, Texas, and didn't have much. When I say didn't have much, you know, ended up going to Fort Scott at community college. When we located him, you know, he was just a football player. When we did the home visit, you know, just to let you know, the home visit, we could not go to his home, if that explains it. And so therefore, it was one of those things, you talked to the kid, and I knew his uncle, and I knew another coach up there, and they came up on a visit. And one thing I said about Coriel Judy, I said, not only will he be a great football player, but he will graduate from Texas A&M. And I believe he's 9 hours away from doing that. He was a kid that people said he wouldn't make it, that he couldn't make it. And so when I look at his stories and where he comes from and where he's at now, if anybody deserving has a chance to go, he is.
Yeah, and kind of, did you ever see him being a guy that could be an NFL draft pick style of player, or did he even surpass your own expectations?
No, even if, you know, when we're recruiting, I'm recruiting every guy, like I said, to win the Big 12 when we were in the Big 12 titles. Okay, and then from there, having an opportunity to go to the next level. And T. Fred himself, you know, have that ability. And there's another kid, you know, he has some talent who I try to get kicked off the team, since I was here, is Lionel Smith. Lionel Smith was the laziest person I've ever coached in my whole entire life. Okay, and but he came back for his 5th year after he graduated and said, "Coach, I'm gonna show you that I can play." And he improved, but it was like one of those things. Do it the year before, and you would be great now. But I believe all 3 at some point would go somewhere drafted and not free agent.
Yeah, and so that kind of takes us, we have about 5 more minutes till this draft starts. Let's talk about the guy that they play against in practice every day and the guy that everyone's here to see on TV tonight. Let's talk a little bit about Ryan Tannehill. I got pulled up some stats for you guys. I thought it was pretty funny. Showed how bad people are at their jobs before. In 2008, the #1 recruiting class in the nation was Miami. And they have not, out of that class, have not produced a single first-round draft pick. Boise State had the number 58 ranked class in the country in 2007, and they've had 5 picks already in last year's draft, and are going to have Kellen Moore drafted probably in this year's draft. And then Justin Blackman, who's projected as a top 10 player, was the 91st ranked receiver in the class of 2008. So that's unbelievable. He was the 10th ranked player at Oklahoma. So that kind of brings us to the guy I want to talk about, who at his time was the 23rd ranked quarterback in his class. He was the 88th ranked player in Texas. He was ranked behind Aaron Cork, Josh Nesbitt, G.J. Kinney, Tyrod Taylor, and that's Ryan Tannehill. Tonight, Tannehill is going to be picked in the top 10 in the NFL draft, and I just want to kind of get your take on his journey here and kind of what you think about Ryan Tannehill.
I've been a Ryan Tannehill fan since Ryan Tannehill had a chance to take over the job. When Steve McGee went on and graduated, went to the Dallas Cowboys, it was a 2-man race between Gerard Johnson and Ryan Tannehill. And, as he stated early on in the show, Coach Sherman allowed us to go to every practice, so we really got a bird's eye view of really who looked better. And, the little whisperings between the media members are all looking at each other going, why is Ryan Tannehill getting more playing time? The dude, the ball just jumps out of his hands. He's a smart kid. I believe he got his degree from Texas A&M in 3 years. He's an orthopedic cert. Yeah, he's pre-med. I mean, the guy is just extremely intelligent. And, Coach, I wanted to get your take on him. He's a guy that you had to train your defensive backs to be able to shut down quarterbacks of his stature. What makes Ryan Tannehill?
What most people don't understand about Ryan Tannehill, and even the critics at ESPN, is he's a guy. He has no worries. I mean, when you got a guy that's almost a straight A student, pre-med student, comes out to practice, he makes a mistake. It's not that he doesn't care, but he doesn't let it get to him. And, he is very talented. And, and I would like, if I can, compare him to another quarterback. When you look at Robert Griffin, everybody is, high on him. But you got to remember, you got system quarterbacks. I mean, if you look at everybody that played underneath Mike Leach, when you got a system quarterback, when you make that transition to the NFL, it's a totally different style of offense. And so even though Robert has all this talent, I believe Tannehill is the better quarterback. If him and Andrew Luck comes out of a system to where it's West Coast style that fits the NFL. So.
And I kind of want to start with Harris and just go right down the row of, obviously you've been around NFL football, everyone likes Ryan Tannehill, but is Ryan Tannehill, let's say if the Dolphins pick him at 8, which most people think they will, is he, in your mind, an 8th pick in the NFL draft?
I think you and I have talked about this multiple times, and Ryan Tannehill is overhyped because he plays quarterback, and because this isn't a very deep year for the quarterback position. Is Ryan Tannehill a first-round pick? Yeah, definitely. But is he a guy who's going to change a franchise? I don't believe so. I just don't see it. I mean, what do you think?
I don't know what to say about that, but Ryan Tannehill to me is a first round. I think whether he goes 8th, he needs to go to a team that needs a quarterback. Whether it's Miami, I think that's a perfect fit for him because he knows the system. Now, can he go in and turn around a franchise? Basically the only thing you got to do is hand the ball off. I understand what the defenses are. And he throws a great ball. So when you look at it, I think he is he's being underrated by some guys, but I think you'll be able to see, just like Andy Dalton, just like a Colt McCoy. I mean, Colt McCoy to me didn't become a great quarterback at Texas until his last year. And once they lost that quarterback at Texas, what happened to Texas? Everything goes downhill. So therefore, that's why it's very important for Texas A&M right now to find a quarterback, because if you don't find a quarterback, it's just like with the Indianapolis Colts. You lose Peyton Manning, guess what happens? You don't have a team.
I don't know what you're thinking, man. I know you're my boy, but I know you're going to stick by your guns with that. But I think Ryan Tannehill, this is me not being homerish at all. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be the best quarterback out of all the quarterbacks in this draft. I think he's walking into the perfect situation in Miami, and having Mike Sherman as the offensive coordinator. You watch that John Gruden special, and you're looking at a guy that knows the terminology, knows the system that he's about to be walking into, and I guess we're expecting him to go to number 8 at Miami. But I feel like has all the work ethic, he has the knowledge, capability of really running and being the face of a franchise that really hasn't had a franchise quarterback since Dan Marino. I mean, he embraces those roles, and I think you saw that in that segment with John Gruden.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of torn on it, because I don't think he's a guy that I would pick in the top 10 if I was drafting a quarterback, unless I'm Miami. I think if he does go to Miami, because he knows the system, he's going to be ahead of the learning curve of where a quarterback would usually be. So I think if I were a team like Cleveland, a team like some of those teams in there that also need a quarterback, I'm not sure that he would be my guy. But at Miami, I do like that pick at number 8.
When you mentioned not in the top 10, whether he goes 22nd or 23rd, but when you look at a kid that has the knowledge as far as the game, when you look at a kid that is as talented as he is, as far as he plays receiver, so he understands basically how to run routes, he understands the coverage, and then going to quarterback. I mean, I think that's what people are missing. I mean, he played receiver, so he understands coverages. He understands where receivers may bend routes. All right, now being a quarterback, and once again, I must call my pre-med student, because I always tell him he's going to be my children's doctor one day. The key thing is, I think, it's knowledge of the game. Working with Coach Sherman and Tom Rosman, I think him and Andrew Luck would be my top 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to, we're just going to close down. I looked this up, thought some people might find this interesting. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill was part of the 2007 recruiting class. The 2008 class with 2 other quarterbacks, and Robert Griffin was the 42nd ranked player in the state of Texas and unrated in every recruiting poll. He wasn't in the Rivals 150, he wasn't in the Scout 200, or the ESPN Rise 150. Not appeared in any of those, and now tonight, the number 2 pick in the draft. And to go with him, Ryan Tannehill from Big Spring, Texas, Robert Griffin from Copperas Cove, and a third quarterback, people forget, Andrew Luck is from Stratford. And he was the number 8 player in Texas that year. And he was ranked behind some other quarterbacks, Dane Christ, Mike Glennon, Terrell Pryor, E.J. Manuel, and Blaine Gabbert were all ranked ahead of Andrew Luck coming out of Stratford High School.
It makes us, as recruiting analysts, like we don't know what we're doing. But I think the thing with Robert Griffin is what Coach Mcmillian just hit on the head. I think with what you just said, in terms of a system quarterback and a guy that really just is going to have to go and learn everything from terminology to verbiage, just in all that aspects of football game that the NFL really stresses you to learn.
If you go back and look at Baylor, I mean, we should have beat Baylor 4 years here. Okay, and the key thing when you look at it, there is no rhyme or reason to why he throws the football. There is no rhyme or reason to why they run the football. I mean, everything is, I can beat Baylor with my eyes closed. Okay, because when we beat him this year, and I was asked a question, well, how do you contain Robert Griffin? Well, the key thing is, all right, you cover the receivers because they're not going to run the football, and you just keep him in a pocket because he doesn't know what to do, and that's what we did. And you keep him in a pocket, he's confused. He's better when he's running. He's a Cam Newton, so to speak.
Well, Cam Newton did pretty well his first season in the NFL. Harris, real quick, and then we'll kind of. Taste real quick, and then we're going to kind of.
Taylor, can you honestly say right now that Ryan Tannehill is going to be a better NFL quarterback than Andrew Luck?
I don't think he has the stature to absolutely embody everything that has to do with the franchise.
I'm of the mindset where Robert Griffin, to me, is going to be a star in this league.
At receiver.
At receiver.
All right, well, we could probably go on for weeks about this, but
It's just to keep debating it.
But my Indianapolis Colts have the first pick in the draft, and they are picking the new demon for the Houston Texans. As long as he can keep the streak alive, and the Texans have never won in Indianapolis, he'll be a great pick. And that's my boy Andrew Luck. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Obviously, we're going to be around here watching the draft for a little bit. If you guys have any questions, I'll have this posted online. You can always come to the board and ask questions. Gig'em247.com is us. AggieSports.com is David Harris. And we got your full coverage all the time. So again, thanks, Coach, for joining us. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Thank you.